Hey there, Johnny Lunch Bucket. Hadn't spoke to anybody this morning, so my voice is kind of... Anyway, I'm having a ball writing my book, God's Purpose System. And it is really just buzzing my mind. And I'm hoping when we're finished with this and you get a hold of it, that you will apply it to things you've done in your life and see how exciting God's purposed system really is. And you can't see it going forward. You have to see it looking back at it. And I'm 77 years old next month, or a couple of months, December. And I've been working on this book, or four of them, three books, this makes four, for 10 years. And finally putting it all together, but it looks like it's going to all go in one book. But the beauty of it is that in our life, and this is called What a Difference a Day Makes, this segment I'm doing right now, and in our lives, and I've said this on several videos, but you know, I've worked at about 60 different places and owned 40 of them, and thousands of employees, and it's been a ball. But when you look at how this happened and where that went, and this segment I'm doing right now will demonstrate that in a few minutes, but you know, I don't care what we're doing or where we get to in life, something prompted getting there. And this section I'm doing this morning is my time with Chick-fil-A. And that was in 1970. And I was either the third or the fourth store that they had. And but the story of getting there is what this is about this morning. In our life, all those encounters, all those places that I've worked and owned. But when you really get down to it and start going down the list, which I've got a list here in the notebook, you know, there's only 6 or 7 or 8 days out of all that really made a difference. And that's what I want to talk about and get into to let people see what a difference a day makes. And in God's purposed system, He'll direct that if we let Him. And that's another part of the book we're writing. But anyway, in 1970, I'd only been back in Vietnam a year and a half. And I met a young lady, her name was Kathy, and she took me to church in Jonesboro, Georgia, First Baptist Church. And I was loud-mouthed and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, so they wanted me to teach Sunday school to the young people. And I had a 1968 Camaro Super Sport. Oh, my goodness, bad to the bone. And every one of them young guys down there just loved it. And so at the time, and I didn't realize what all that was, but that made me popular with them. So one Sunday after church, this little man, older man, walked up to me and he said, "My kids really like you, and I would like for you to come and look at what we're doing. I'm in the restaurant business, and I'd like for you to come and look at it and see if you've got interest in operating one of them." And of course, I was just being nice. I didn't think anything about a restaurant. So I said, sure. But anyway, I was in this construction business. I owned a contracting business, and we were building a school out in Snapfinger School out in DeKalb County. And so I told Truett, I said, well, one of these rainy days, he wanted me to go to South DeKalb Mall and look at one of the stores he had. I said, well, a rainy day, I'll go over there and look. Well, that rainy day came, and I said, well, I better go do this. So I walked in that mall, and back in the day, malls were busy. I mean, busy. So I walked in the mall, and South DeKalb was basically a T. Had stores this way, that way, that way, and that way. And so I walked right into the middle, and when I got into the center of that, I looked across that little area there, and there was a little store over there, red and white. Wasn't big as nothing. And it said Chick-fil-A on it. I never heard of Chick-fil-A. And so I started to walk over there, and I just stopped dead in my tracks. And when I looked at the people behind the counter, and they wasn't but two of them, they had on paper hats with Chick-fil-A wrote on the side of them and little red bow ties. And I stopped and said, they ain't no way that this airborne combat veteran is going to wear one of them paper hats and a little red bow tie. There ain't no sense in me going over there. But I said to myself, I told Truett I'd come look, so I'm going to go look. So I went by the counter, and there's a door, side door, actually going to the kitchen naturally. And so I just opened that door, and when I opened it, there's a guy standing in there. He's probably in his 50s. But as soon as I opened the door and stepped in, he said, "You got to be George. Truett told me you was coming." Now here stands a guy with an apron on that's triple layered, and he's standing at one of them stainless steel tables over there battering chicken. He's got batter up to his arms on both sides and happy as a pig in slop. Well, that's an old term. And so I said, yeah. He said, "Come in here." So I walked in, and he was just personality plus. And so I walked in the place, and we was standing there and talked for a minute. And he said, "Come around me." And on the other side of it, walked around, and there's a door going out to the front. He said, "Stand there in the door a minute." So I got over in the door, and I was watching him batter that chicken and put them chicken breasts on one of them green trays. And in a minute, they're going to put that in a henny penny fryer, which out front, cook it, and here we go, Chick-fil-A sandwich. So I was standing there listening and watching, and he said, "What do you think about all that?" I said, "Well, it's loud, it's busy." And he said, "Listen." So I stopped and and he was standing back there. I couldn't see any of this, but he could hear it. Every time one of them registers opened, that little old bell would ring on those old registers. Ding, 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 and it was just constant because it was that quick. And so he said, every time that bell rings, I make a dime. And back in 1970, there's a big difference in a dime than there is a dime now. But he was standing there, and I was just saying, boy, it was constant. Ding, 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 ding. And so I walked back around, and I said, "How long you been doing this?" Da-da-da-da-da, and we talked through all that, and there was green shelves above his head, like in all the restaurants where they store stuff. But he reached up above his head, and there was a stack of papers that he had put up there, and one of them was sticking out a little bit, and he just reached up there and got it and was pulling it loose from the rest of the stack of papers, and when he did, the batter on his arm literally fell off, and he laid that paper out in front of me, and he said, "That's my last month's P&L." And I looked at it and looked pretty hard at it, and I said, "Last month?" He said, "Yeah, last month." I said, "You making good money?" He said, "Yes, I am." And all of a sudden, that little red bow tie looked better. That paper hat didn't look so bad. And to make a long story short, I decided I'm going to do this. So I actually got trained right there with Winfred Kerbo was his name at South DeKalb Mall. And it was a pleasure. But when we opened Perimeter Mall, and that's what my store was, we broke all the records they had done the very first day. And we did that by changing the system a little bit of how many people. And that's a whole story that I'm going to write about. But the most that ever done in a day at any of the other 3 or 4, how many Chick-fil-A's there was $1,700. I did $2,900 the first day because instead of having 4 people or 5 people out front, I had 9. Nobody could move. You stand right here, don't do anything but this. And it's funny now, it wasn't then, but Truett was, fit to be tied when he walked in that morning they were going to open and I had that many employees there. He was just livid. And I said, well, just wait till the day's over and let's see the difference. And this gets a little comical right here. But so we worked like crazy all day long, and it was blowing and going. And I had my mom in the kitchen. She was the first person I hired. And so she was, putting out slaw and potato salad and all of it. But it was fun. It was humming. And so at the end of the day, we was counting up money, and I'll never forget this. And so Truett was counting out the cash registers. And when he finished counting, he got $1,700 and something dollars is what he had. He said, I knew we wasn't doing that much more than what all this. I said, Truett, we did it. So about 5 minutes later, he found the bag of money that he stuck under the pie case in the middle of the day, emptying the drawers out. Total $2,900 and something dollars. And so is that kind of thing. But that changed how Chick-fil-A did their setup in the front. In other words, that many people. And what I realized in a hurry, if you're doing volume, you can't have too many employees. Because if somebody's working and you're doing volume, they're making you money. And so it was fun. It was a ball. But in that, what a difference a day made. When I walked into South DeKalb Mall, had I just turned or walked back out on my first thought of that, I'm not going to do this. Because what happened, I hired my mom. And then I hired my dad, which was probably the biggest joy in business that I had in all them years. My mom and dad were making a combined income of $13,000 a year between them. And so got them at Chick-fil-A, and that income went from that to 100,000 plus. It was awesome. And the first person Mom hired at her store was my older brother who had just graduated from college. And so just a few months later, he got a Chick-fil-A. And he stayed with Chick-fil-A 40-something years. Mom retired from Chick-fil-A, made a lot of money. And I was only there a couple of years because I was bored to death. Really. Because Truett's rules, you couldn't have but one of these stores. And the system, once you got it working, it just worked itself. Now, it was a lazy man's way to go, but it just didn't have the oompa. But the beauty of it is, what a difference a day makes. And then at this age, when I'm looking back on that, then what did I bring to the table? And what did Chick-fil-A bring to me? Because that's what is important with all this. And so with all of it, I analyzed all of it. Thank you, God, for Mom and Dad getting a Chick-fil-A, and thank you, God, for my brother Frank getting a Chick-fil-A. And I wasn't there long enough, and I learned a lot. But restaurants, it was good and it was profitable, but it wasn't some cranky tractor. But what was this. Now listen. That old guy back that said, get in here, you got to be George. Winfred Kerbo. I wrote this in another essay. But Winfred Kerbo is the greatest golfer that ever lived. And I've owned 17 golf academies since then. And I've played golf with, some of the best. I had over 40 PGA pros working for me. Had 17 golf academies. And I played golf with, they're old school now, but the majority of the players. And did I allow it? Yeah, I enjoyed it. But when Winfred Kerbo, during our training, invited me to go play golf, I said, I'm not playing that silly game. But it was kind of like the bow tie. He said, I got clubs, I got everything, let's just go play. We went over to Brown's Mill Golf Course in College Park in Atlanta. And ladies and gentlemen, by the third hole, I was addicted. I'm going to do this. And I played it all my life till 2 years ago, and I'm physically not able to swing right now, but awesome memories. And if I'd have turned and walked away in that mall that day, what would we have missed? Mom and Dad and Frank would have missed a great business opportunity, and I would have missed 17 golf academies and all the joy of that. So Winfred Kerbo probably never broke 80 in his life, but he's the greatest golfer that ever lived because he introduced me to golf. And ladies and gentlemen, the story with this morning is, and I wrote this sometime yesterday, I had 16,000 members at my golf academies. 16,000. That means I sold 16,000 custom sets of golf clubs. And enjoyed it, and it was awesome. But in scorekeeping, and let's look at God's purpose system. 16,000 members. Now, in God's book, how many people have I taught and brought to Christ? And which one of those things is important? Golf or heaven? Now, golf's fun, but it ain't fun like heaven gonna be. God's purpose system. Thank you, God, for developing all that. And when we get this book finished, hope all of you get one and do a thing for yourself. Write those 7 days in your life, and it may be 8 or 9 or 2, and find the purpose. And then put a God in front of that and a systems after it, and you got God's purposed system. And you can't tell it till you've lived it, because it's looking back on it. And what an awesome life I have had. And I'm thankful for all the things that I've learned and done, but just thankful this morning that I listened to that. Go see. And now I rely every day on what God is saying to me. And a lot of people think that is insane. Ladies and gentlemen, He talks to us. You just have to turn the volume up where you can hear Him. He's there. Saved my life many times. Vietnam, he was my point man. I didn't call him that then. I was too stupid, didn't know enough about him. But how many times he said, the enemy's out there. And how many times in my life have I started somewhere on a trip? And he said, don't go there. And how many times I've actually turned around and went back home. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's GPS. The GPS in your car is going to say turn right, turn left, and God's going to say, watch it. But if you don't turn that volume up where you can hear it, it's useless. Be there. God's purposed system.